On a quiet Tuesday morning in March, when most of Britain was just beginning their day with cups of tea and morning news, something extraordinary was about to unfold at Kensington Palace. The security cameras capture it first. Two figures in casual clothes, walking hand in hand down the grand steps where countless royal ceremonies had taken place. But this wasn't a ceremony. This wasn't planned. This was pure human emotion breaking through centuries of royal protocol. What happened next would make headlines around the world, bring tears to millions of eyes, and remind everyone that beneath the crowns and titles, the royal family are simply people with hearts that break and heal just like everyone else. The gesture was so unexpected, so genuine, that even the most seasoned royal correspondents would struggle to find words to describe it. This is the story of a moment that changed how the world saw William and Kate forever. A story of love, loss, courage, and the power of human kindness when it matters most. A story that proves sometimes the most powerful royal gestures are the ones that come straight from the heart, without any script, without any planning, without any thought of cameras or consequences. The farewell that followed would leave an entire nation speechless and remind us all why some moments are simply too precious for protocol. The morning started like any other at Kensington Palace, but beneath the surface, something was different. Catherine, the Princess of Wales, had barely slept. She stood by the tall windows of their private apartment, watching the early morning joggers make their way through Hyde Park. Her reflection in the glass showed someone who had aged years in just the past few months, though she was still as beautiful as ever. The worry lines around her eyes told a story that no royal photographer would ever be allowed to capture. Prince William found her there, as he had so many mornings recently. He didn't need to ask what was wrong. They both knew. The phone call they had been dreading finally came 3 days ago. Sarah Mitchell, the little girl who had captured their hearts during a hospital visit 6 months earlier, was losing her battle with leukemia. She was only 8 years old. The couple had met Sarah during one of their routine visits to Great Ormond Street Hospital. While they met dozens of brave children during such visits, something about Sarah was different. Maybe it was her infectious laugh despite being so sick, or the way she had boldly asked William if he ever got tired of wearing fancy clothes. Or perhaps it was when she told Kate that she looked like a real princess, but wondered if she knew how to braid hair like her mom used to do. What happened next surprised everyone in the room. Kate had sat down on Sarah's hospital bed and asked if she could try braiding Sarah's thin hair. For 20 minutes, the future Queen of England sat braiding the hair of a sick little girl while William told terrible jokes that made Sarah giggle until her sides hurt. The royal security team shifted uncomfortably. The hospital staff exchanged glances, but William and Kate seemed completely absorbed in making one little girl smile. That visit was supposed to last 30 minutes. They stayed for 2 hours. Sarah's mother, Jennifer Mitchell, was a single parent who worked as a cleaner at a local school. She had been overwhelmed by the royal couple's kindness, but what touched her most was how natural they seemed with Sarah. They didn't treat her like a sick child to be pitied. They treated her like any other 8-year-old who loved Disney movies, complained about vegetables, and dreamed of having a pet dog. Before leaving that day, Kate had quietly asked Jennifer if they could stay in touch. Not through official channels, she explained, but personally. Jennifer was stunned. She stammered out her phone number, not quite believing that the Princess of Wales would actually use it. But she did. 2 days later, Kate called. Not a secretary, not an assistant, but Kate herself. She asked how Sarah was feeling and if there was anything they needed. When Jennifer mentioned that Sarah had been disappointed to miss her school's talent show because of treatment, Kate asked if Sarah might like to have a private talent show at the palace. A week later, Sarah and her mother found themselves in one of the smaller drawing rooms at Kensington Palace. William played piano while Sarah sang her favorite song from Frozen. Kate recorded it all on her personal phone, promising to send copies to Jennifer. George, Charlotte, and Louis joined them for tea, and Sarah spent the afternoon teaching the young royals how to make friendship bracelets. It became their secret tradition. Every few weeks, Sarah would visit the palace. Sometimes they would bake cookies with Kate. Other times, William would show her the palace gardens and let her pick flowers. The children adored her, and Sarah would often say these were the happiest days of her life. The media knew nothing about these visits. The palace staff were sworn to secrecy, not by any official order, but because they all understood this was something special and private. Even the security team, normally all business, found themselves smiling when Sarah arrived with her little backpack and her mother's nervous energy. As Sarah's condition worsened, the visits moved to the hospital. Kate would arrive with craft supplies, and they would make get-well cards for other sick children. William would bring books and read stories in different funny voices that made Sarah laugh even when she felt terrible. Sometimes they would just sit quietly together, Sarah dozing while Kate held her hand and hummed softly. The doctors marveled at how Sarah's spirits improved during these visits. Her mother, Jennifer, later said that William and Kate gave Sarah something to look forward to during her darkest days. They made her feel special, not because she was sick, but because she was loved. 3 months ago, Sarah's condition took a serious turn. The treatments weren't working anymore. The doctors gently explained to Jennifer that it was time to think about making Sarah comfortable rather than continuing aggressive treatment. Jennifer was devastated, but she also knew her daughter had been fighting so hard for so long. When Kate received the call, she had to excuse herself from a meeting with foreign diplomats. She found a quiet corner and cried for the little girl who had become like family to her. William found her there 20 minutes later, and without saying a word, he held her while she sobbed. That evening, they called Jennifer together. They wanted to know what they could do, how they could help, what Sarah needed. Jennifer, through her own tears, said that Sarah had one last wish. She wanted to have a tea party with her royal friends one more time. But this tea party would be different. Sarah was too weak to travel to the palace, and bringing a full royalty service to the hospital seemed impossible. The logistics alone were staggering: security, protocols, medical equipment, space limitations. Any official royal event required weeks of planning and dozens of staff members. Kate looked at William that night and said simply, "We'll figure it out." What they figured out would break every rule in the royal handbook. They decided to create a magical tea party right in Sarah's hospital room, but not as the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge. They would come as William and Kate, as the friends who had grown to love a brave little girl. The planning had to be done in complete secrecy. Kate personally called the hospital's head of pediatrics and explained what they wanted to do. The doctor was moved, but concerned about security and disruption to other patients. Kate assured him they would come quietly, with minimal security, and stay only as long as Sarah felt up to it. William reached out to their most trusted security officer, Detective Inspector James Morrison, who had been with them for years. When William explained what they wanted to do, Morrison's first instinct was to list all the reasons why it was impossible. Then, he thought about the little girl he had seen laughing with the royal children during her palace visits. He said he would make it work. Kate spent days planning every detail of the tea party. She wanted it to be perfect, magical, something Sarah would remember. She ordered special china with Sarah's favorite Disney characters, arranged for her favorite foods, and even planned party games they could play in the small hospital room. The hospital staff were briefed on what was happening, but they were asked to keep it completely confidential. Most of them couldn't believe that the future king and queen would go to such lengths for one little patient. But those who had witnessed William and Kate's previous visits weren't surprised at all. 2 days before the planned tea party, Sarah's condition suddenly deteriorated. The doctors called Jennifer in the middle of the night. Sarah was in the intensive care unit, and they weren't sure she would make it through the week. Jennifer called Kate at 6 in the morning, sobbing. The tea party would have to be canceled. Sarah was too sick, too weak, barely conscious most of the time. Kate listened quietly, then said, "Let me call you back." She found William already awake, reading the morning briefings. When she told him about Sarah, he set down his papers and looked at her. They both knew what the other was thinking. "We go today," Kate said. "Today?" William agreed. What they were about to do would require them to abandon their official schedule cancel meetings with government officials, and show up at a hospital with no advance notice to security services. It was unprecedented. It was against every protocol. It was exactly what their hearts told them to do. At 8 that morning, Kate called the hospital and spoke directly to Sarah's doctor. She explained that they wanted to come that day, not for a tea party, but just to say goodbye. The doctor was amazed by their dedication, but warned them that Sarah might not even be conscious. "It doesn't matter," Kate said. "She'll know we're there." By 10 o'clock, William and Kate were in their car, driving toward the hospital with the smallest possible security detail. Kate carried a small bag with a few special items, a hand-knitted blanket she had made for Sarah, a photo album of all their times together, and a letter she had written but never intended to read aloud. The hospital staff were notified just 30 minutes before they arrived. Nurses quietly moved other families to give them privacy, and the intensive care unit was briefly cleared except for essential personnel. When Jennifer saw them walking down the hospital corridor, not in their formal royal attire, but in simple, casual clothes, she broke down crying. Kate immediately wrapped her in a hug, and William put his hand on her shoulder. "How is she?" Kate asked gently. "She's been asking for you," Jennifer whispered. "Even when she's barely awake, she keeps saying she's waiting for the tea party." Kate and William exchanged a look. Their planned goodbye visit had just become something else entirely. Standing outside Sarah's hospital room, William and Kate could hear the steady beeping of medical machines and the soft whoosh of ventilation equipment. Through the small window, they could see their young friend lying in the hospital bed, looking impossibly small, surrounded by all the medical equipment keeping her alive. Dr. Rachel Stevens, Sarah's primary physician, met them outside the room. She had been treating children for 15 years, but she had never had royalty visit one of her patients like this. More importantly, she had never seen such genuine care from anyone outside a child's immediate family. "She's been drifting in and out of consciousness," Dr. Stevens explained quietly. "But this morning, during one of her lucid moments, she told me she was waiting for her friends to have tea with her. She's been holding on." Kate's breath caught. The idea that this brave little girl was fighting to stay alive, just to see them, was almost too much to bear. William squeezed her hand as they followed Jennifer into the room. Sarah looked so different from the vibrant child who had taught their children to make friendship bracelets just months ago. Her face was pale and thin, her breathing shallow. But when she heard familiar voices, her eyes fluttered open, and the faintest smile crossed her lips. "You came," Sarah whispered, her voice barely audible. Kate sat down in the chair beside the bed and took Sarah's small hand in hers. "Of course we came, sweetheart. We promised you a tea party, didn't we?" "But I'm too sick for a tea party," Sarah said, looking around at all the medical equipment. William moved to the other side of the bed and gently touched Sarah's forehead. "Who says you're too sick? I think this room could use a good tea party." What happened next would later be described by the nursing staff as pure magic. Kate reached in her bag and pulled out a small travel tea set she had brought. It wasn't the elaborate palace china they had planned to use, but it was special. It had been Kate's own tea set when she was a little girl. "My grandmother gave this to me when I was about your age," Kate said, setting the tiny teacups on Sarah's bedside table. "I thought you might like to use it for our tea party." Sarah's eyes brightened slightly. "Really? Your own tea set?" "Really," Kate confirmed. "And look what else I brought." She pulled out a thermos of actual tea that she had prepared at home, along with small sandwiches cut into heart shapes and tiny cupcakes decorated with Sarah's favorite colors. The hospital staff watched in amazement as the Princess of Wales transformed a sterile ICU room into a magical tea party setting. William had his own surprise. From his jacket pocket, he produced a small wooden crown, painted gold with colorful gems glued on by small hands. "George made this for you," he said. "He said every proper tea party needs a princess." Sarah's eyes filled with tears of joy as William gently placed the handmade crown on her head. "Tell George it's the most beautiful crown ever," she whispered. For the next hour, something extraordinary happened in that hospital room. Despite the machines, despite the medical reality surrounding them, despite everything, they had a tea party. Kate poured pretend tea into the tiny cups. William told his terrible jokes that made Sarah giggle weakly, and Jennifer watched through tears as her daughter experienced pure happiness in her final days. Sarah insisted that everyone wear paper crowns that Kate had brought, including Dr. Stevens, who had been drawn into the room by the sound of laughter. The sight of the future King of England wearing a pink paper crown while having tea in a children's hospital was something none of them would ever forget. During a quiet moment, when Sarah was resting but still awake, Kate showed her the photo album she had compiled. Every page contained pictures from Sarah's visits to the palace. Sarah baking with Kate, playing with the royal children, picking flowers in the garden with William. Sarah's face lit up at each memory. "I look so happy," Sarah said softly. "You were happy," Kate replied. "And you made us happy too. You made our whole family happy." As the afternoon wore on, Sarah grew more tired, but she fought to stay awake. She didn't want a tea party to end. She didn't want her friends to leave. William noticed her struggle and sat on the edge of the bed. "Sarah, do you remember the song you sang for us at the palace? The one from Frozen?" Sarah nodded weakly. "Would you like to sing it with me again?" What followed was a moment that would forever be etched in everyone's memory. William began singing "Let It Go" in his distinctly unmusical voice, and Sarah joined in with her weak but determined little voice. Kate harmonized softly, and even Jennifer found herself singing along through her tears. The nursing staff gathered quietly outside the room, many wiping their eyes as they heard the unusual concert taking place inside. One nurse later said it was the most beautiful thing she had ever heard, not because of the singing, but because of the love that filled every note. When the song ended, Sarah looked at William and Kate with tired but peaceful eyes. "Will you stay until I fall asleep?" "Of course we will," Kate said immediately. As Sarah grew drowsy, Kate began telling her a story about a brave little princess who went on adventures and made friends with everyone she met. The princess in the story had magical powers to make people smile even when they were sad, and she lived in a beautiful castle where tea parties happened every day. "Is the princess me?" Sarah asked sleepily. "The princess is definitely you," Kate confirmed. As Sarah drifted off to sleep, still wearing her handmade crown, William and Kate sat quietly beside her bed. They had come to say goodbye, but this felt more like the end of a perfect day rather than a farewell. Jennifer walked them out into the corridor, struggling to find words to express her gratitude. Kate hugged her tightly and said, "Thank you for sharing her with us. She's taught us so much about courage and joy." "She loves you both so much," Jennifer said. "You've given her the happiest months of her life." Before leaving, William and Kate spoke quietly with Dr. Stevens and the nursing staff. They wanted to make sure Sarah would have everything she needed for comfort in her final days. Kate left her personal phone number with Jennifer, asking her to call day or night if there was anything Sarah needed or wanted. The drive back to Kensington Palace was quiet. Both William and Kate were lost in their own thoughts, processing the afternoon they had just experienced. They knew they had probably just attended their last tea party with Sarah, and the weight of that realization was almost unbearable. That evening, William found Kate in their private sitting room, working on something at her desk. When he looked closer, he saw that she was writing in a journal, documenting every detail of their afternoon with Sarah, every smile, every laugh, every precious moment. "I don't want to forget anything," she said when she noticed him watching. William sat beside her and added his own memories to the pages. They wanted to preserve every detail of their brave friend's final tea party. 3 days later, at 2 in the morning, Kate's phone rang. It was Jennifer. Through her tears, she said simply, "She's gone." But she was peaceful, and she was wearing the crown George made for her. Kate woke William, and they held each other and cried for the little girl who had touched their lives so profoundly. They had known this call would come, but knowing didn't make it any easier. The next morning, they faced a difficult decision. Royal protocol dictated that their involvement with Sarah's family should end with her death. There were procedures to follow, official channels for expressing condolences, proper ways to handle such situations. But William and Kate weren't thinking about protocol. They were thinking about Jennifer alone and grieving. They were thinking about a little girl who deserved to be honored properly. They were thinking about doing what felt right, regardless of what the rule book said. Kate called Jennifer that afternoon and asked a question that would lead to one of the most controversial decisions of their royal career. What can we do to help you say goodbye to Sarah? Jennifer's answer would set in motion a series of events that would challenge royal tradition, capture the world's attention, and ultimately change how the public viewed the monarchy forever. Because what Jennifer asked for was simple, but royal participation in it was absolutely unprecedented. "I want to give Sarah the funeral she deserves," Jennifer said. "She always said she felt like a princess when she was with you. I want her to have a princess send-off." When Kate told William about Jennifer's request, they both knew what they had to do. They also knew it would probably cause a scandal, break numerous protocols, and likely anger palace officials. They decided they didn't care. The call to Sir Edward Halifax, the Prince of Wales's private secretary, was unlike any conversation he had experienced in his 30-year career managing royal affairs. William sat in his private study at Kensington Palace, with Kate beside him for support, as he explained what they wanted to do. "Sir, with respect, what you're suggesting is impossible," Sir Edward said carefully. "Members of the royal family do not attend private funerals of non-family members. There are security implications, media concerns, and questions of precedent that would be impossible to manage." William listened patiently to all the reasons why they couldn't attend Sarah's funeral, then said quietly, "Edward, we're going. The question is whether you'll help us do it properly, or if we'll figure it out ourselves." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Sir Edward had known William since he was a child, and he recognized the tone in his voice. This wasn't a request or a consultation. This was a notification. "Your Royal Highness," Sir Edward said finally, "if you are determined to do this, then we need to discuss how to minimize the complications." Over the next 3 days, a plan was developed unlike anything in royal history. William and Kate would attend Sarah's funeral, but not in any official capacity. They would come as private citizens, as friends of the family. No official car, no standard security detail, no advance notice to local authorities. They would slip in quietly, pay their respects, and leave. The plan required the cooperation of the funeral home, the church, and the local police, all of whom had to be sworn to secrecy. Even then, Sir Edward warned them that if word leaked to the media, the funeral could be overrun with photographers and reporters, turning Jennifer's goodbye to her daughter into a circus. Kate spent hours on the phone with Jennifer, helping plan details that would honor Sarah's memory. They decided on a simple service at the small church where Sarah had been baptized, followed by a burial in the local cemetery. Kate quietly arranged for flowers, not elaborate royal wreaths, but simple bouquets of Sarah's favorite daisies and sunflowers. The most difficult part was explaining to their own children what was happening. George, Charlotte, and Louis had grown to love Sarah during her visits to the palace. She had become like an older sister to them, teaching them games and always bringing them small gifts she had made herself. When William and Kate told the children that Sarah had died, Charlotte immediately asked if they could go to her funeral. The idea of 9-year-old Charlotte attending a funeral was complicated, but Kate realized that their children needed to say goodbye too. After much discussion, they decided that Charlotte and George would attend, while Louis, at 6, would stay home with his nanny. It was another break from protocol. Royal children didn't typically attend funerals outside the immediate family, but William and Kate felt it was important for their children to understand that real friendship doesn't end with death. The funeral was scheduled for Thursday morning at 10 o'clock. On Wednesday evening, Kate couldn't sleep. She found herself in the palace kitchen at midnight, baking cookies, Sarah's favorite recipe that they had made together during one of her visits. She planned to give them to Jennifer and the other children at the funeral who had known Sarah from the hospital. William found her there, flower in her hair and tears on her cheeks. He didn't say anything, just started helping her roll out the dough. They baked until 3 in the morning, making dozens of heart-shaped cookies decorated just the way Sarah had taught them. Thursday morning dawned gray and drizzly, fitting for such a sad occasion. William, Kate, George, and Charlotte dressed simply. No designer clothes, no jewelry except Kate's wedding ring, nothing that would draw attention or seem inappropriate for a grieving mother's budget. They left Kensington Palace in William's personal Land Rover, the same car he used for private outings with his family. Detective Inspector Morrison followed at a distance in an unmarked car, their only security concession to reality. The drive to the small town where Sarah had lived took 45 minutes. As they got closer, Kate's anxiety grew. What if reporters had found out? What if their presence overshadowed the service? What if they had made a terrible mistake? But when they arrived at St. Mary's Church, everything was quiet. A few cars in the parking lot, some neighbors arriving with flowers, but no media in sight. Jennifer stood at the church entrance with her sister and parents, greeting the small group of mourners. When she saw the royal car pull up, she walked over immediately. Kate got out first and went straight to Jennifer, embracing her like an old friend. "How are you holding up?" she asked gently. "Better now that you're here," Jennifer replied. Sarah would be so happy. George and Charlotte shyly approached Jennifer with a bag of cookies their mother had made. "We made these for Sarah," Charlotte said softly. "The way she taught us." Jennifer knelt down to their level and hugged both children. "She would love these. Thank you for remembering her." Inside the church, William and Kate took seats in the back row, hoping to remain as inconspicuous as possible. The service was simple and beautiful, exactly what Sarah would have wanted. Local children from her school choir sang her favorite hymn. Her teacher read a poem Sarah had written about friendship, and Jennifer spoke lovingly about her brave daughter. When it came time for people to share memories, Kate looked at William questioningly. They hadn't planned to speak, feeling it might be inappropriate. But Jennifer caught Kate's eye and nodded encouragingly. Kate stood up slowly and walked to the front of the small church. The other mourners, maybe 30 people total, watched in quiet amazement as the future Queen of England approached the simple wooden podium. "Most of you know me as Catherine," she began, her voice steady but emotional. "But Sarah knew me as Kate, her friend who wasn't very good at braiding hair, but was always willing to try." A gentle laugh rippled through the congregation. "Sarah taught my family so much about courage, about finding joy in small moments, and about the power of friendship. She made us better people just by being herself. The last thing she said to me was, 'Thank you for being my friend.' But I need to thank her because knowing Sarah was one of the greatest gifts of our lives." Kate paused, looking at the small white casket covered in daisies and sunflowers. Sarah believed that everyone deserved to feel special, to feel loved, to feel like they mattered. She lived that belief every day, even when she was fighting for her life. Today, we promise to carry that belief forward, to treat everyone we meet with the same kindness and love that Sarah showed us. When Kate returned to her seat, there wasn't a dry eye in the church. William squeezed her hand, proud of his wife's courage to speak from her heart in such an intimate setting. The burial service was even smaller, just family and closest friends. William, Kate, and their children stood quietly to the side as Sarah was laid to rest. When it was over, people began to approach them, not as royal subjects meeting their future monarchs, but as fellow mourners sharing memories of a special little girl. Mrs. Henderson, Sarah's teacher, told Kate how Sarah used to write stories about her royal friends and always insisted they were real. "I thought she was just being imaginative," Mrs. Henderson said. "I never believed her until today." Tommy Martinez, Sarah's friend from the hospital, showed William a friendship bracelet Sarah had made for him. She said she learned how from a real prince and princess, he said proudly. As they prepared to leave, Jennifer pulled William and Kate aside. "I have something for you," she said, reaching into her purse. She pulled out a small photo album, similar to the one Kate had made for Sarah. "Sarah made this for you," Jennifer explained. She worked on it during her last weeks in the hospital. She wanted you to have something to remember her by. Kate opened the album with trembling hands. Every page contained drawings Sarah had made of their times together. Stick figures with crowns having tea parties, a drawing of the palace garden with flowers everywhere, pictures of children holding hands with friends forever written in crayon underneath. The last page had a letter in Sarah's careful 8-year-old handwriting. Dear William and Kate, thank you for being the best friends ever. You made me feel like a real princess, but you are the real princess, and prince because you have kind hearts. Please take care of George and Charlotte and Louis and tell them I will watch over them. Love, Princess Sarah. Kate clutched the album to her chest, unable to speak through her tears. William wrapped his arms around both women, and the three of them stood together in the cemetery, united in their love for a remarkable little girl. As they drove home, the children were unusually quiet in the back seat. Finally, George spoke up. Mom, why doesn't everyone know how wonderful Sarah was? Kate turned around to look at her son. What do you mean, sweetheart? She was so special, but only we knew her. Shouldn't everyone know about people like Sarah? William and Kate exchanged glances. Their 9-year-old had just articulated something they had been thinking about for months. Sarah's story deserved to be told. Her courage, her kindness, her joy in the face of unimaginable challenges. These were lessons the world needed to hear. That evening, after the children were asleep, William and Kate sat together in their private sitting room, still processing the day's events. They had broken numerous royal protocols, ignored official advice, and done something completely unprecedented. And they had no regrets. We need to tell her story, Kate said finally. I was thinking the same thing, William replied. But how do we do it without exploiting her memory or invading Jennifer's privacy? The answer came to Kate suddenly. We let Jennifer tell it. We help her share Sarah's story in whatever way she feels comfortable. And we make sure any proceeds go to helping other children like Sarah. It was a decision that would lead to their next controversial choice, one that would put them at odds with palace officials and traditional royal protocol, but would ultimately create something beautiful from their grief. Because what they were about to propose would mean sharing their private pain with the entire world. 2 weeks after Sarah's funeral, Kate made a phone call that would change everything. She reached out to Jennifer with a proposal that initially seemed impossible, but gradually began to feel like exactly what Sarah would have wanted. I've been thinking, Kate said during their call. George's question about everyone knowing how wonderful Sarah was, it's been haunting me. What if we could find a way to share her story? Not as a royal charity project, but as a genuine celebration of who she was. Jennifer was quiet for a long moment. Since Sarah's death, she had been approached by several journalists wanting to write about the royal friendship, but she had declined them all. The last thing she wanted was for Sarah's memory to be turned into tabloid sensation. What did you have in mind? Jennifer asked cautiously. Kate had been thinking about this for days. A book, she said. Sarah's story, told in her own words through the journal she kept during her treatments, combined with our photos and memories. All proceeds would go to Great Ormond Street Hospital's new family support center. The idea was beautiful, but complicated. No member of the royal family had ever co-authored a book with a private citizen. The legal, security, and protocol issues would be staggering. But Kate had already spoken to William about it, and they were both determined to find a way. Jennifer loved the idea immediately. Sarah had kept detailed journals throughout her illness, not just about her treatments, but about her dreams, her friendships, her hopes for other sick children. The journals were full of drawings, pressed flowers from the palace gardens, and stories about her royal adventures. The palace officials were horrified. Sir Edward Halifax called an emergency meeting the day after Kate formally proposed the book project. In the formal meeting room at Kensington Palace, he laid out his objections with precision and frustration. Your Royal Highnesses, he began, this project would set precedents that could fundamentally alter how the monarchy operates. If you co-author a book with a private citizen, every family you meet will expect similar treatment. The security implications of sharing personal photos are enormous. And commercially publishing a book puts you in direct competition with other authors and publishers in a way that raises serious questions about fair trade. Kate listened patiently to every objection, then said simply, "Edward, Sarah kept a journal entry about every one of our visits. She wrote about what we meant to her, but also about what she hoped her story could mean to other sick children. We're not doing this as royals. We're doing it as friends who want to honor her memory. But you can't separate your private feelings from your public roles," Sir Edward protested. "Everything you do reflects on the monarchy." William spoke for the first time during the meeting. Then, maybe it's time the monarchy reflected something like this. The statement was so blunt, so clearly final, that Sir Edward realized this was another notification, not a consultation. The book was going to happen. His job was to figure out how to manage the fallout. Over the next month, a plan emerged that satisfied no one completely, but made the project possible. The book would be published privately, with all proceeds donated directly to charity. William and Kate would not do any promotional appearances or interviews. The project would be presented as a personal tribute to a friend, not an official royal publication. Working on the book together brought Jennifer and Kate closer than ever. They spent hours at Jennifer's small flat, going through Sarah's journals and selecting photos. Kate was amazed by Sarah's writing. Even as an 8-year-old, she had captured emotions and insights with surprising depth. One journal entry, written after Sarah's first visit to the palace, particularly moved Kate. "Today I had tea with real princess and prince, but they are not like in movies. They're like the nicest grown-ups ever who actually listen when kids talk and don't pretend to care. Kate braided my hair, and it felt like having a big sister. William told jokes that were so bad they were good. I think they are magic, but not the fairy tale kind. The real kind that makes people happy." Another entry, written during one of Sarah's hospital stays, brought both women to tears. "I am sicker today, but I keep thinking about the palace garden and how many flowers there were. Kate said I could take as many as I wanted, and I fill my whole bag. Mom put them in water, and our flat smelled like the palace for a week. I think maybe when you take flowers from a happy place, they keep the happiness inside them. I want to remember that when I feel sad." The most powerful entries were from Sarah's final weeks, when she wrote about her fears, but also her hopes for other children in the hospital. "I know I might not get better, and that's scary, but not as scary as I thought. I have had the most wonderful adventures and made the best friends. I hope other sick kids get to feel as special as I did. Maybe someone should tell them that being brave doesn't mean not being scared. It means doing fun things and loving people even when you're scared." As they compiled the book, Kate found herself learning more about Sarah's life before they met. Jennifer shared stories about Sarah's early childhood, her love of animals, her dreams of becoming a teacher so she could help children learn. Kate realized that their friendship, as special as it had been, was just one part of a remarkable little girl's full life. The book project took 6 months to complete. During that time, William and Kate continued their regular royal duties, but they also spent countless hours working on what they privately called Sarah's book. They wrote their own sections about their friendship with Sarah, but they were careful to let her voice be the central focus. Kate's favorite contribution to the book was a section where she transcribed Sarah's detailed instructions for the perfect tea party. Sarah had written a step-by-step guide that included everything from how to set the table, flowers are very important, to how to make guests feel welcome. Ask them about happy things, not sad things. William's contribution focused on Sarah's incredible bravery and how she had taught his family to find joy in simple moments. He wrote about watching Sarah play with his children, how she had treated them not as royals, but simply as friends, and how that had been a gift to his entire family. The decision of when and how to release the book created another crisis at the palace. Traditional protocol would have demanded a coordinated media strategy, official announcements, and careful management of public response. But William and Kate wanted something different. They decided to have a simple launch event at Great Ormond Street Hospital, where Sarah had spent so much of her time. Only the families of children currently receiving treatment would be invited, along with the medical staff who had cared for Sarah. There would be no media, no official photographers, no grand speeches. The event was scheduled for a quiet Saturday afternoon in November, exactly 1 year after William and Kate's first meeting with Sarah. The hospital's family room was decorated with sunflowers and daisies, Sarah's favorite flowers, and tables were set for tea parties, just as Sarah had taught them. When families began arriving, many were surprised to see William and Kate serving tea and cookies, just as they would have done with Sarah. The royal couple moved from table to table, talking with children about their treatments, their hopes, their fears. Many of the children had read Sarah's journal entries that were excerpted in the book, and they wanted to share their own stories. 8-year-old Marcus, who was receiving treatment for a brain tumor, told Kate that reading about Sarah's bravery had helped him feel less scared during his procedures. She wrote that being in the hospital is like going on an adventure where you meet new friends and learn how strong you are, he said. That made me think about it differently. Lily, a 6-year-old with leukemia, showed William a friendship bracelet she had made after reading Sarah's instructions. Sarah wrote that making things for people you care about puts love inside the gift, Lily explained. I made this one for my mom because she cries sometimes when she thinks I'm not looking. As the afternoon continued, something beautiful happened. The children began sharing Sarah's lessons with each other, teaching new patients how to make friendship bracelets, explaining her happiness flower theory, and using her words to comfort scared younger children. Jennifer, who had been nervous about the event, watched in amazement as Sarah's spirit seemed to fill the room. This is exactly what she would have wanted, she told Kate. She always said that kids helping kids was the most powerful magic in the world. Near the end of the event, Dr. Stevens, who had cared for Sarah in her final days, made an unexpected announcement. The hospital had received not only the proceeds from the book sales, but also a separate donation from William and Kate's personal foundation. Together, the funds would create the Sarah Mitchell Family Support Center, a space where families could stay close to their children during treatment, complete with a special tea party room where children could host celebrations during their recovery. The announcement was met with tears and applause from the families present. But the most moving response came from Jennifer, who stood up and addressed the room through her tears. A year ago, my daughter was just a sick little girl who loved Disney movies and terrible jokes, she said. Today, she's touched the lives of children she never met, in a hospital where she'll never go again. That's not because of anything special we did. It's because she believed every child deserves to feel loved and special, and she lived that belief every single day. She looked directly at William and Kate. You didn't just give Sarah friendship. You gave her a way to keep helping other children even after she's gone. That's the greatest gift any parent could ask for. As families began to leave that evening, many stopped to thank William and Kate, but not for the usual reasons. They thanked them for showing their children that friendship doesn't have to end with death, that love continues in the ways we help others, and that even the smallest people can make the biggest difference. The book, titled Sarah's Adventures, A Little Girl's Guide to Big Courage, was never officially released to the public. Copies were made available only to families dealing with childhood illness, medical professionals working in pediatric care, and children's hospitals around the world. Within 2 years, it had been translated into 15 languages and was being used in hospitals across 6 continents. The media eventually learned about the book and the launch event, but by then, it was too late to turn it into a sensation. The story was already complete, the gesture already made, the impact already spreading. Most coverage focused on the positive effects the book was having on families dealing with childhood illness, rather than on royal protocol violations. More importantly, Sarah's story had taken on a life of its own. Children in hospitals around the world were teaching each other her friendship bracelet techniques, following her tea party rules, and finding comfort in her words about being brave while scared. 3 years later, Kate received a letter that made her cry happy tears. It was from a 10-year-old girl in Australia who had read Sarah's journal entries during her own cancer treatment. Dear Kate, The letter read, "I wanted to tell you that Sarah was right about the flowers keeping happiness inside them. I've been collecting flowers from the hospital garden and pressing them in books, just like she did. When I feel sad, I look at them and remember that beautiful things can grow anywhere, even in hospitals." Sarah taught me that through her words. Please tell her family that her adventures are still helping kids on the other side of the world. That letter now sits framed in Kate's private study, next to the photo album Sarah made for them and the handmade crown from George. It serves as a daily reminder that sometimes the most powerful royal gestures are the ones that come from the heart. Ignore protocol and focus solely on what matters most, treating every person with dignity, love, and respect. The farewell that stunned the nation had become something even more powerful, a beginning rather than an ending, a legacy of love that continues to grow with each child who learns that being small doesn't mean being insignificant, and that friendship is the most royal quality of all.